Today's is in Cantabria, the other two in Asturias. 1/3 and 1 first category mountain on the way to the final one today. And the Alto Campoo has been climbed before, but not as far as Fuente del Chivo, the goat spring, which might give some indication as to why it rates an especial classification.
Well, a little move off the front of the main field, and it comes from Caja Rural and from the ever-willing Angel Madrazo, who's been on the attack on this Vuelta before, and he's decided that he's going to show himself. No reaction, of course, to his move, especially bearing in mind that there are 5 riders who they've basically let go for the day. So Madrazo will try and see what he can do to get across to those other 5. But it seems a remarkably early moment in the race to make that kind of move, and a brave one to see if you can make that stick.
Oh, it's one of those moves, I think, at this stage of the race. If you find yourself feeling good, you can't predict if you're going to have a good day or a bad day, and you might just be sitting there feeling very much in control. And sometimes it's good for the morale and even good for the team if the race picks up behind here. Now Caja Rural, they don't have to do any work behind, and if attacks go, they can sit on those moves and say they've got a teammate up the road. Although it's fairly futile regards trying to bring back those 8 minutes on his own, it's still, you know, it's better than sitting there doing nothing if you're feeling good.
Quite right, and that's the way that Madrazo, the Portuguese rider, 27 years old, in a breakaway on stage 8 and stage 10. That's exactly the way he races, and anyone who remembers the Tour of Britain in 2013 will know all about that. As John Degenkolb moves to the, well, it's the front of the gruppetto now, just having a little chat.
Yeah, and you can see how that's formed so quickly. It's been very organised, and people, you have certain teams that'll be there, and in the 3rd week they'll look out for each other. They'll be positioned near the back of the bunch for when they know they'll set a moment in the race where they know the gruppetto can form, and they can get safely to the finish without fighting too hard to be in the delay, and that's exactly what's happened there.
5 riders go under 11 kilometres to go, and interesting just to catch a glimpse of the gruppetto there, because there were at least 4 giant Alpecin riders straight out the back into the gruppetto, and Tom Dumoulin will pretty much be left on his own up this climb, won't he?
Yeah, he's pretty
Lawson Craddock.
I think that's Lawson Craddock. We saw him earlier on the previous climb, the Cap 1 we did, the Puerto del Escudo. You had Lawson Craddock right up the front when it started all right. He was looking actually really comfortable, so I think he's going to be the last man with Tom Dumoulin. And the rest of the guys, they'll know what they can and can't do, and today they can't do much in a climb like this, so they'll just throttle back and take it as easy as can in preparation for helping him where and when they can tomorrow and the day after.
Movistar take things up, and Angel Madrazo finds himself 30 seconds or so up the road, and in no man's land, but that's exactly the territory he wanted to attack. As Europcar just move up to the front as well. Good news for them, of course. We understand that they have found a new sponsor for next year, so riders like Thomas Voeckler will have a home. As indeed will Sylvain Chavanel, we understand, who's wanted to return back to the team where it all began for him, and he almost certainly will be riding for, well, it won't be called Europcar, we don't know what it'll be called next year. They've found a French sponsor. And so they continue to climb, ticking off the kilometres on this gradual incline. It's very steady here, the gradient. It doesn't seem to oscillate at all.
And this is one of those positions as well, as you can see they're kind of all riding quite conservatively. They're still very smooth, riding through, working together, because they can see the peloton's not interested in racing for the stage today. So they're playing a kind of a patient GC game behind. So it's in the interest of these 5 riders to kind of hold back as long as possible, because the first one to attack now will probably be the first one to lose, or kind of, because that will force the action, force everyone to start chasing. Then they'll almost announce that they're strong. So they're just going to wait as long as possible and let the peloton kind of slowly chip away at them, because they know now there's a strong chance they're going to make it to the finish line, if not almost sure.
Well, no immediate sign here of Alejandro Valverde, but Nairo Quintana is protected, and we saw him smiling a little bit earlier. The moto camera picked him out, which is a rare thing indeed, and he's looked, oh, there's a little bit of a...
I think what happened there, just as you were saying that, I think Quintana was saying the same thing to Visconti, whereas Valverde, so Visconti, teammate, has now dropped back to try and find him. So he's probably dropped back for one reason or another, but I think you and Quintana were on the same wavelength there, Ned.
Another Colombian, Carlos Quintero, part of the 5 up the road. If he can pull off a win here, as Madrazo just gets out of the saddle and tries to inject a little bit of urgency into his effort, and he is well clear of the peloton who have let him go, but he's all on his own, and it's a long way to the top. No, going back to Nairo Quintana, he's 3 minutes and 7 seconds down, but of the remaining field, he is on paper and on form, and if he's motivated, the kind of climber who can nick back a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes on a stage like this easily.
Yeah,
well, I say easily, obviously not easily, but he can do it, can't he? He's of that calibre.
Yeah, he is of that calibre, but it's still not quite going hard enough at the moment. I mean, unless you can just do, any of them can do an explosive move. The fact that Madrosa's got such a big a gap on the peloton in that short period of time goes to show the peloton's not riding at full whack yet, which is also displayed by the fact it's still reasonably good. There's still about 60 riders there, 50, 60 riders, if not more. So that kind of indicates that Movistar haven't wound it up completely yet.
As a man who's fallen off his bike and is waving for help, someone get to him quickly. 8.5 kilometres to go now, and the gap just tickling down rather than coming down in chunks, because there's no great urgency from within this group to bring the leaders back. They have let them go for the day, one suspects. Fabio Aru in the red jersey, looking thoroughly in control at the moment. He's had his entire team alongside him all day. 7 riders for Astana. Let's not forget that Vincenzo Nibali and Paolo Tirolongo went home very early on. So Aru has benefited from the likes of Luis Leon Sanchez, who's on the front at the moment, and some great work from Vannotti and Cataldo, his Italian teammates, who have dictated the pace so far. 8.3 kilometres to go, and the gap just coming up at 8 minutes for the first time. Five breakaway riders passing under 8 kilometres to go, and the gradient still very gentle and the pace reasonably high. Not especially high amongst these 5, they're just marking each other at the moment, but behind you can see things are beginning to string out now. Luis Leon Sanchez got on the front a few hundred metres ago, and he started to inject a bit of pace into this chase. Yeah,
it looks like Astana have now decided they've been playing a fairly conservative game, so now we can see all of a sudden people are getting fired out. And that's Adam Hansen there. We've also seen Daryl Impey was hanging on there still, so we can see now the big guys who are finally getting fired out, and that's all happened in the last 500 metres. Movistar were kind of setting a fairly steady pace, then all of a sudden Astana came to the front with Luis Leon Sanchez, and you could see him wind it up just immediately, and it's starting to string out, which goes to show that everyone's trying to get on the wheel and trying to hide from the wind.
Yeah, you mentioned Daryl Impey was in that group. That was Tosh van der Sande as well, who's also a sprinter, so that was an indication of how gentle the pace had been, that the sprinters were, or some of the sprinters at least, were living with that pace. But you can see now riders just being fired out of the back of this. Fabio Aru there, taking a drink of water, thinking about making an attack himself, but he'll leave it, I'm sure, much later, to the last 3 kilometres possibly.
And he's got 4 teammates, so he won't move until he's used up all those teammates, and he sees Movistar has still got 2 riders there. Fran Ventosa, who's in 3rd position, is doing a great ride, because he did start his career as a sprinter and has turned into a very strong domestique for Movistar, but we'll see him. I'm not sure he'll last much longer, but we're going to see those guys get used up before Aru moves. Now,
Pierre Rolland in the colours of Europe car, you can see just in front of Ruben Plaza here, is in an interesting position, because you would have thought that the Europe car riders who you've seen fairly prominently might have been trying to set something up for Pierre Rolland, but that's not the case, of course. They are looking after their man in the highest position on the overall now, Roman Sicard, who moved up yesterday, as well as Gianluca Brambilla, into the top 10, benefiting from that breakaway move yesterday. So that's the game plan for Europe car, protecting their GC position. Katusha still with 2 cards to play. Daniel Moreno, whose 34th birthday it is today, and slightly better placed in the overall, in fact in 2nd place overall, 27 seconds down on Fabio Aru, Joaquim Rodriguez.
I think this really is going to be a climb where they're going to see. I mean, we can see that Astana are going to have to force it. We talked about it earlier. Aru has to try and 30 seconds isn't enough. That's how much he has in Dumoulin. Rodriguez isn't as big a concern, because he knows he can probably beat him in a time trial. He wouldn't expect to lose time to him, that's for sure. Whereas Dumoulin is the man that he has to distance. So although he's in the leader's jersey, this isn't a case of him doing the usual scenario where it's defence. He's going to have to be aggressive.
Yeah, it is that time of the Grand Tour where we start to get the slide rules out and we look at the history books and we try and figure out what the differential on pure form might be between Aru and Rodriguez and Dumoulin, and the general consensus, probably absolute nonsense because these things are never as easy as this, but we kind of think it's something like 2:30 to 3 minutes that he will lose to Tom Dumoulin in all likelihood.
No, you'd imagine. You see how much the temperature drop here. So cycling and its high-tech visuals at 13.5 degrees, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we'd expect that Tom Dumoulin would put. I think him being conservative, he was being very safe. He'd say a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But at the same time, he's capable of putting 3 minutes in. He is next to Tony Martin and Fabian Cancellara and Bradley Wiggins, one of the best time trialists in the world. So, and that's Aru is one of the best climbers in the world, but he's never been thought of as one of the best time trialists in the world.
This isn't going to work today for Angel Madrazo. His expression tells you everything about that last 3 or 4 kilometres of effort that he's put in. Tried to get away, did get away, but just found the rest of the climb beyond his capabilities and fell victim to that injection of pace there from Astana, and he is coming back to the group quickly now. Michael Cherel from AG2R La Mondiale just glances across to see what the others are doing as Quintero takes things up. 4.5 kilometres remaining for the group of 5 up the road, who really will very soon be starting to finesse their effort and work out when to attack, how to attack, what the best moment is. Alessandro De Marchi, so strong. A winner on the Vuelta last year, a winner on the Tour de France 2 years ago. You'd have thought of those 5. Would you make him favourite?
I would. I mean, his pedigree would certainly kind of point to that. Although he's had quite a quiet year. Now, this is the sort of De Marchi that we saw last year at the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España. So this is the first time he's got something to prove. He's already spoken how he considers himself to have had a terrible year this year. So we'll see. This is a perfect opportunity for him.
There's a reason for that, of course. BMC rider has had an inflammation of his Achilles tendon for most of the year, but he's back from that injury and he means business. 7 kilometres now for the group of GC favourites. And Cherel is the first of the 5 to show his hand. He has attacked under the 4-kilometre banner, and Puccio is the first to react, bringing Jose Rojas with him and the others. Cherel, though, opening up a little bit of a gap as Puccio gets out of his saddle, tries to inject a bit of pace, bit of urgency, and bring back the AG2R La Mondiale rider. He's looked very strong, hasn't he, Cherel? He has. Throughout this Vuelta.
And to make the fair, here goes the counter from De Marchi. He was in perfect place there. You let the other guys do the first chase, let them tire out, then you jump them, which is exactly what he's done. But he's got to do it with, as he's doing, he can't think about the guys behind him. He's just got to get onto that wheel of Cherel, because that will force them to chase him as hard as they can as well without getting any benefit of his slipstream. And now, poor Puccio, who was the first guy to chase down Cherel, is paying the most for that effort. Oh,
big gap opened up already to Salvatore Puccio. Looks like it might be game over for him. Quintero gets himself into a rhythm and gets himself onto the wheel of Jose Rojas, and those two line up behind the big man, Alessandro De Marchi, the most powerful rider perhaps of this group of 5, but they're not across to Cherel yet. Let's not forget that Michael Cherel rode in support of Romain Bardet on this year's Tour de France, and he actually finished 18th overall on the Tour, which is testament to his strength.
Exactly, that's a fine performance on its own, for sure.
And he finished 16th on the climb up to Pralou as well, so he knows all about climbing. De Marchi's going to get across to him, though, I think, just through brute strength.
When you see how strong De Marchi is, he does look like he's still got a kind of good form on the bike and looks in control. But he knows, they all know that Rojas is the best sprinter there. I mean, he can win small bunch sprints, so you don't want to be at the top of a climb with him, because there's a high chance, if he's still a bit fresh, that he's going to be able to just pump them all.
Luis Leon Sanchez continues to set the pace for Astana, with Dario Cataldo just on his wheel, and very interesting to see how attentive now Tom Dumoulin is to the red jersey. He has one rider with him, as you said, Lawson Craddock, just working to put his team leader Tom Dumoulin in the right position, and that is right on Aru. Up front, though, Michael Cherel passes under 3 kilometres, so that last kilometre ticked off incredibly quickly. Looks over his shoulder, sees that De Marchi has brought the race back to him. So we have De Marchi, Rojas, Carlos Quintero from Colombia, and Michael Cherel. 2.9 kilometres remaining, and the gap, because Astana are working hard now, has come down to 5:48. Well, the peloton of the red jersey is beginning to thin out. Fabio Aru now just 3 Astana, I say just 3 Astana teammates working for him. Diego Rosa, Mikel Landa so strong, and Dario Cataldo still there in front of Fabio Aru. Meanwhile, Salvatore Puccio has rejoined the group of breakaway riders, only to find that Michael Cherel attacks again, and he goes up the road. He's so game, this rider, and again it's Demarchi who has to respond, and again Jose Rojas just sits on his wheel. But this time Puccio is able to live with the acceleration, so remarkable that he managed to get back on, and remarkable that Demarchi is able to respond each time to Cherel. But for how much longer? Cherel looks fresh, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, both him and Demarchi seem fairly equally matched, but they both know they're kind of they don't stand a chance of winning if Rojas keeps sitting there, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to let Demarchi keep closing down. He'll keep letting Cherel attack, and if Demarchi won't bring him back, he'll have to go on his own. But that's what happens once the group's back together again. It's just going to sit there and stall, because they're all going to look at each other and wait for the next attack, because Rojas is never going to attack. That's not in his interest, unless he's really near to the finish and is 100% sure it can last, because he knows that he can beat all these guys in a sprint. It's quite good fun when it's like this, because you have to know exactly what each rider is going to do and predict it. Now, Rojas knows that Cherel's strong. He knows that he's probably the weaker sprinter. Demarchi's actually quite a good sprinter as well. Normally from a group like this, Demarchi wouldn't worry about the sprint. He'd be able to probably win it. But I mean, the problem is with Rojas there, it's just that's what's kind of checkmating all this. Each one of them knows that if they attack, Rojas is going to come after them.
Well, this is like a track race on a climb as Rojas decides to go. That's an interesting move. So Rojas lays down his big attack, and Puccio is able to respond. Cherel then looks over his shoulder, and he knows Demarchi and Quintero are on him as the lead two riders simply disappear into the thick fog up at this top. Rojas. That's
the perfect move, because he's been watching them and realises they're kind of scared of him, and he obviously feels he's strong because of the fact he could follow Demarchi so easily each time Cherel went, and he knew they were all looking at him and expecting him not to move anything. So he's kind of done the reverse tactic, if you like, kind of. But now we've got to make sure, because now we see Demarchi, and this could have been a mistake by Rojas. It's like whether like I said, if he was going to go, he has to be absolutely sure he can make it to the finish. Because in my opinion, he didn't actually have to attack. He just had to survive with these guys to the finish.
Oh, Rojas might have buried himself too deeply there with that attack, because he seemed to have come to a bit of a standstill there. And as Demarchi responded, he just went straight past him. So that's the race up front, and it's one of those days when we do have two races on the same climb. The race for the stage win that is being contested in the fog a couple of kilometres up the road, and now the big GC race as Mikel Landa is the last Astana rider. Today he really is working for the red jersey and setting things up for what we imagine is an attack by Fabio Aru. He has Tom Dumoulin right on his wheel, Alejandro Valverde marking Dumoulin as well, and behind him Rafa Maica.
Valverde can't hold the wheel. Valverde's been blown out by Landa's turn on the front there, and Aru's going. He's probably seen that or heard that, probably heard on his radio that Valverde's blown, so he's going now.
Landa gets on the radio and he lets them know that Aru has gone. This is the big move that we all expected from Fabio Aru as he tries to put time specifically into Tom Dumoulin. Meanwhile, Salvatore Puccio is remarkable in his grit and determination to stay in this race. It looked like he was out of it, but he is bridging over to Alessandro Demarchi. Those two possibly contesting the stage win. They only have 1.1 kilometre remaining, but down the road, the big GC battle is raging, and it's Fabio Aru who's decided to make the big move there. Puccio gets across to Demarchi and goes past him. Fabio Aru, he has Pavel Polyansky, I think, rather than Rafa Maica, the Tinkoff Saxo rider, with him. And Nairo Quintana living today, having a better day. He's living with Aru. I wonder if he can get on his wheel and maybe attack him. There's Rafa Maica. So he's been dropped, and Esteban Chavez then goes with Mikel Nieve from Team Sky. Maica not having a great day. But here is a big GC race now. Quintana clearly in much better shape today than he was in Andorra. He's with the red jersey. I wonder if he can do anything to get past him. Meanwhile, the leaders have less than a kilometre to go. Demarchi's got past Puccio, and Demarchi is opening up a gap. I wonder if this is the race win. He's disappeared into a wall of people, a wall of noise, and a wall of fog as Aru continues.
That's been a great ride by Demarchi, just kind of reading that group and kind of controlling it himself and letting Rojas do that strange move. But Valverde's back with this group. Now see Polyansky's been blown off after trying to hang on. Now his job will be to ride for Maica.
Well, it might be Jasper Hansen actually from Tinkoff Saxo, but for the time being, Dumoulin is just trying to limit his losses to Aru. He will lose time today, almost certainly, but how much? That is the big issue. As Demarchi solos now within 700 metres, looks over his left shoulder. He won't see much, I doubt, in the fog, because I think that Puccio, having dug deep to get back into the race, is finally dropped. Now Aru getting out of his saddle. No reaction like that from Quintana, who looks very comfortable for the time being.
This does look like the Quintana we know and love. I mean, he does looks very much in control. He's letting Aru do all the work. He knows Aru has to, because this is Aru racing for GC, so he's going to let him do all the work and maybe jump him into the final, or just sit there and let Aru burn more energy than he, so he can save it for the days ahead.
I think we're looking at the stage winner, though, Alessandro De Marchi from BMC. BMC lost their team leader today, Samu Sanchez, abandoning, but they have some recompense in this rider here. Alessandro De Marchi riding out a stage win. Further down the road, Aru and Quintana in each other's company. Alejandro Valverde unable to live with those two today.
And it is Jesper Hansen, it's not Poyansky. I think we're all confused there. He's now been dropped from the front, which is a great ride, even trying to go with Aru, but now he's back and he's working for his leader, Maika.
Well, De Marchi battling injury all season as Dumoulin continues just to track the attack from Aru and Quintana and do what he can just to stem the flow of seconds that he can feel trickling away from him. He knows he'll get time back in the time trial, but Aru knows that as well, and Quintana. So that is what that battle is all about. Meanwhile, De Marchi gets out of the saddle. You cannot see the finish line in the fog. You'll be wondering where on earth it's gone. It seemed like he passed under the kite some time ago that marked 1 kilometre remaining. He still, if those graphics are to be believed, has 300 metres, and he looks worriedly over his shoulder.
He won't be able to see anything. He doesn't know who's coming up or if they are.
There's a little counter move there. Looks like Esteban Chavez has gone in the company of Nieve, and Maika or Hansen.
That was Maika, yeah.
Aru then with Quintana on his wheel. Big noise here, big crowds. This is a passionate Spanish cycling country here as we hit the mountains of Asturias, and De Marchi is disappearing into the fog. We won't even see his great moment of victory unless the fog lifts for him and we can see the celebrations thoroughly deserved as De Marchi now is in the home straight. He will win from here, there is no doubt about that. De Marchi, a winner on last year's Vuelta, came in bouncing good form to the race this year and has got stronger and stronger as the race has gone on. The strongest of that group of 5 punches the air. Now he can see the finish line. We can't see him, but he knows he's won in the fog on a high mountain. Well, it's another stage win for BMC, from the beach on the Costa del Sol on stage 1 to the high mountains and the gloom. And a brilliant solo win from Alessandro De Marchi. Meanwhile, though, that group of Chavez have actually got across to Aru, so Aru's attack has not really produced too much here.
And that's perfect for Quintana, because now he knows he's been sitting on Aru's wheel for that long. He sees Aru's weakening, because Aru must be if they've caught back up to him. So this is the perfect opportunity for Quintana to go, once he realises they're all back up there and that Aru has slowed down.
Well, that's some counter-attack from Esteban Chavez, and I wonder what ambitions he still has.
And the problem here now is Aru has exposed himself. He's done that big attack. He's got no teammates left. He's gone obviously deep into the red and is paying for it. And I think he was just getting countered by Maika as the camera shot just took away.
Mikel Nieve then, under 1 kilometre to go. Just trying to get across to that elite group of GC riders then just a little bit further up the road. Or is that that's with Rodriguez and Pozzovivo?
Yeah, that's Chavez, the red jersey
group with Aru.
And this is, it's in all their interest to work to go with Aru now, because they all want to distance Dumoulin. They're all pure climbers. They all need to put time in him if they want to stand a chance of moving up the GC.
Well, for the time being, Tom Dumoulin is benefiting from some good work by Louis Meintjes defending his GC position. And here goes Nairo Quintana. And Aru thrashing around on the bike, weaving from left to right, tries to respond. But Quintana is sending out a message here. Don't write me off from the Vuelta. With the mountains still to come, I've still got it. And I'm gapping the rest of the climbers. That's more like the Quintana that we know and have become familiar with. There's a counter-reaction there from Rodriguez, who tries to get across to Quintana. But look at the gap opening up. Still got a kilometre to go.
And this is Aru. He went too early. He still had Landa there in a strong position. He's gone too far out, but he's going to fight. We know he's a fighter. But you can see they're all kind of on their last legs here. Quintana realised he had Rodriguez with him, and once he's on the wheel, said, I'm not going to ride. Quintana will only put the effort in if he's got nobody on his wheel, because he doesn't want to distance Valverde, who is there chasing behind.
Alejandro Valverde then leading Danny Moreno and Tom Dumoulin, Louis Meintjes and Mikel Landa. Of course, this is all about really what Dumoulin can do to limit his losses, as Rodriguez continues to set the pace then with Nairo Quintana on his wheel. These are all valuable seconds for Rodriguez vis-a-vis Fabio Aru. But Aru is digging deep.
And as Posseview, they're all just, you can see they're all at their absolute maximum at the moment. And Quintana Rodriguez seems to be the best of them now, but Quintana just sitting on his wheel. But we don't know. I don't think Valverde is too far behind. I think Dumoulin's doing a great ride, just limiting his losses at the moment.
Well, you say you can see. You can't actually see. They've just disappeared into the fog. But you can see that Fabio Aru is on his limit now, bobbing from left to right, and his handlebars are getting flung all over the road. Mikel Landa just drops back. His work is done. It wasn't about a stage win for him today. It was about working for Fabio Aru as Esteban Chavez passes him, and into the murk go Rodriguez and Quintana, away from Aru. Pozzovivo drops off the back in the company of Maika. You can see the red jersey there just in front as gaps open up in the final few hundred metres of this stage today. A high mountain finish, and Quintana in this GC race has gone past Rodriguez, Chavez and Aru. So Aru, in terms of the GC riders, is in 4th place at the moment. The strongest on the day, Nairo Quintana. Rafa Maika isn't able to live with that. That's Quintana coming over the line. A few useful seconds for him just chipping away. Rodriguez has opened up in the end, a tiny gap to Aru, who was on his limit there and was, in the end, defending. Now, what is the gap from the red jersey to Tom Dumoulin? Where is Tom Dumoulin? In the white jersey, in the white out at the top of the mountain. Great ride from Chavez today. He's not finished on this Vuelta yet. There's more to come from him, clearly. More to come from Quintana. Okay. There is Tom Dumoulin.
20 seconds, or less, I think. So that's an incredible ride by Tom Dumoulin.
He'll be happy with that. He could have lost a minute. I'm sure Aru would have liked to engineer a situation like that. But Tom Dumoulin has defended stoutly today. And we've seen resurgent form from a clutch of climbers who still have ambitions on this race. And with 2 summit finishes over the next 2 days, it's a mouth-watering prospect again.
Well, he started things off on the final climb, Fabio Aru, but perhaps didn't finish them quite as well as he would have hoped to. Tom Dumoulin loomed out of the mist, having lost touch with the leaders, but not a great deal of time. Here's the result. Alessandro De Marchi had 21 seconds over his nearest pursuer, Salvatore Puccio, in the end, with the rest of the break spread over a minute behind the winner. Nairo Quintana was the first big name across the line, 6 seconds ahead of Joaquim Rodriguez and 7 ahead of Esteban Chavez and Fabio Aru. Rafael Maika and Domenico Pozzovivo were another 5 seconds back. And Tom Dumoulin came in with Alejandro Valverde and Danny Moreno, having lost 19 seconds to Aru. Well, it was clear for a long time that the winner was going to come from the day's break, but it wasn't clear to Alessandro De Marchi that it was going to be him.
Michael Cherel made it difficult for you. Did you know you were the strong man in that group?
I think he was the strongest, and everybody look at me, and so I have to do the big job. And then with a bit of luck, I had in the right moment the energy to do a fast attack. So I was lucky because I don't think I was the strongest.
Now, it wasn't just misty at the top of the final climb, it was cold. Nairo Quintana kindly sacrificed a bit of his post-race insulation long enough to give us his take on the day.
Bueno, me he sentido muy bien. Ayer y estos días he pasado muy mal y ya al parecer va pasando el virus que me había dado y bueno, espero poder luchar por lo menos por el podium y quedan bastantes etapas aún para recuperar tiempo.
Tom Dumoulin is still leading the combined competition for the highest placed rider across the red, green and polka dot jersey competitions, and he's still third overall despite losing some ground today.
That's the first of 3. How was it?
Not as good as I was hoping for, but yeah, still I lost a little bit of time, but not too much. And yeah, the coming 2 days are even harder actually with the finishes, shorter but steeper. So normally I would lose a little bit more time the coming 2 days, but yeah, I didn't have my best day today, but it wasn't also. I managed to save my losses or save my seconds.
Here's the updated GC then. Fabio Aru has lost a second of his lead to Joaquim Rodriguez. He's now at 26 seconds, with Dumoulin third at 49. Esteban Chavez moves up to 4th, ahead of Rafael Maika, and Miguel Nieve jumps past both Alejandro Valverde and Danny Moreno into 6th. Chavez, Maika and Nieve all moved closer to Dumoulin as well, but all three would need to be actually ahead of him heading into the time trial. Nairo Quintana seems to be healthy again, and he's back into the top 10 exactly 3 minutes down. Well, Fabio Aro's Astana team set the pace today, and it all looks set for a repeat of the stage 11 finish when he rode away from his rivals to take control of the race. But it didn't quite work out like that today, which is probably good for the prospects of a tight battle to come. Nonetheless, Aru stays in the red jersey and has 2 more chances to pad his lead further over Tom Dumoulin before the rest day and the time trial on the other side of it.
Fabio, hai avuto buone gambe, come hai trovato l'ultima salita?
La corsa è andata via la fuga dopo una sessantina di chilometri. Noi abbiamo cercato insomma di controllare, poi sull'ultima salita abbiamo fatto il passo noi. Dai, adesso pensiamo ai prossimi 2 giorni duri.
Sembra che Nairo abbia ancora una volta le gambe.
Ma Nairo non si scopre di certo oggi, insomma è un grande campione, quindi è sempre da tenere controllato, è un corridore da temere comunque.
Domani un attimino più duro?
Sì, domani e dopodomani sono 2 tappe ancora più dure, quindi pensiamo a recuperare per questi 2 giorni.